Next, Alesha will tell us about each monster, about how each monster has its own voice, creativity, alienation, and my singing monsters. Alesha, please.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great,
yes.
Great. Unfortunately, I can't tell you about every monster in this game, which will be probably the topic of another talk. So hi, my name is Alesha Serada. I'm a PhD student at the University of Vasa, Finland, currently with the financial support from the NISI Foundation to study for the studies that are related to commerce. Generally, I study crypto games, free-to-play games, exploitative games, games that are not games, all the bad stuff and terrible stuff. However, today I want to talk about a good game, about the good game that is actually magical in many ways. It still has a dark side, which we will also discuss by applying the lens of analytical Marxism. It will be very brief. This is a part of my larger project about free-to-play games and Marxism. It is currently on hold, but I present pieces of it every year at Frog. So this year we have a little bit. We have the game that is a little bit less exploitative, still very applicable. So, and probably those of us who have been here in the morning, you have already seen the talk from Markus Meschik, and he provides a very good summary of typical free-to-play design techniques. So I will continue from that, so to say. So music. We know that it is at least as old as games and probably even older. The first found music instrument you can see here, found in Germany quite a while ago, made of a mute swan bone. This breaks my heart. I love swans. The other instrument that you see here is a lithophone. And the game that we will discuss, it actually works like this lithophone, probably only on your mobile devices, but it is generally very, very similar. It also has like objects that sound differently and you arrange them in a nice playground, and each monster has its own voice. Now we have music video games, of course, after 10,000 years of not having music video games. And if you need a better presentation of them, you may turn to a lovely book, a collective volume, Music Video Games, Performance, Politics and Play. It was edited and assembled by Michael Austin, published by Bloomsbury Academic in 2016. So this volume discusses all the iconic games, starting from Simon and Guitar Hero and Mario Paint Composer, and I won't go into that today. And the case that I want to present, it is also mentioned in that book, but very, very briefly. And this is the series of casual games, My Singing Monsters. So My Singing Monsters, there are actually 3 games already under this title, 2 full games and 1 music composer, 1 composer software, so to say. The first version appeared in Canada in 2012, developed by a relatively small company, Big Blue Bubble, Big Blue Bubble, and then it was published by Big Fish Games and many other publishers, and as well as I guess they published this game on mobile by themselves already. They published the sequel to this game as Big Blue, and it caught this stage of explosive growth of free-to-play games in the West, which came probably around 2013, 2014. So the first version is a one-time purchase, as far as I remember, but then they started integrating different free-to-play mechanics, free-to-play monetization. However, we might want to remember that its initial design was not free-to-play. This game successfully combined several typical game mechanics, very typical for casual games. Firstly, it's a pet breeding simulator. So you start with a limited amount of monsters, you breed them with each other, and you get more different monsters. Sometimes there are monsters that you can only breed at a certain time of the year, such as now, before Christmas. Then you collect those monsters, you put them on islands, you have like little monster farms that you cater to, that you collect gold from those monsters, and so on, so on. So this part is like a typical free-to-play game, and it mostly works like a typical free-to-play game. However, there's also the music editor. So when you have enough monsters, you can put them on a special composer's island, and you can actually write pieces of music by using their voices. You can use a very simple like you can just put sounds on a very simple liner note style lines, but yeah, if you know at least some very basic music, like music theory, like super basic, you can actually recreate popular games and generally have fun with this game, making your own music in it. So it's basically samples of monsters' voices and sounds that you place on the lines, and if you know how to, at least something about tones and rhythm and everything, you can actually write your own music. So, and you can do it on a mobile device, on a small mobile device. So this is its main selling point, so to say. And you can share your compositions with other players. Not many players do this, but those who do, they love this game to death, as you can imagine. It's really simple, it's really user-friendly, and it has been around for 7 years. And it is still popular. For a casual free-to-play game, this is actually an achievement. So the game has been a little bit modified when it was published in 2015. So this is when all this free-to-play craze came. So, and the new version puts more pressure on players. They need to invest more time in the game. You don't just get all these nice monsters. You have either to pay for them, or you have to grow your farm of monsters, breed them, collect gold, upgrade your farm, all these typical farming mechanics that you usually have. And when you have grinded for just enough time, you get the access to all these composer islands and singing monsters, and you can actually create music with it. So we may say that players need to earn the right to become a musician. They have to engage in very repetitive play, in a grind-like play, same as in farming games, to earn the right to become a better musician. Only in this way they get the access to the composer's island and all the different samples that they can use. This part of the game becomes increasingly abstract, and it is actually removed from the initial creative goals of the players who come to the game to probably make music. Only the most dedicated make music, but those who do, they stay with the game for they're very, very dedicated to the game. In this way, a play actually becomes labor. So coming to your farm of monsters every day, clicking them, collecting gold, breeding them, upgrading your island, getting access to another island, unlocking monsters of that island, collecting gold, upgrading monsters, breeding new monsters, and so on and so on. So work becomes labor. Players invest their time into the game. They stay longer, which means they're more likely to make an in-game purchase, which is the point of free-to-play games in most cases. But then after they have gone through all this, they can actually make music in the game. So this part of the experience is quite often, it is very easy to look at this game through the Marxist lens. Like the first concept that comes to mind is alienation. This is when the workers are alienated from their own creative labor. You work on something, you are supposed to work on music. Instead of that, you collect gold from your monsters. I guess this is very similar to actual music business. I don't know, please correct me. So most of your time is dedicated in getting enough gold and upgrading your equipment. And then you, in this way, if you only look at this part of the game, you are being alienated from the act of creation, the act of making something that is yours, the act of making, adding your own creative input to this amazing world of singing monsters. So you lose from the most part of this game, you lose yourself in it. You just become a clicking machine, a clicking returning machine. But in the end, you will get all the monsters and you will start making music with them. So this concept of alienation, of course, it comes from Marx, it comes from the famous draft. It was actually like a famous, one of the most famous drafts from the 1844 economic and philosophical manuscripts. And then Karl Marx goes to great length to develop this idea in Capital. And the next stage of analysis that you might want to go into, speaking of this particular logic of creative labor, this is the concept of reification. This is the development of Marxist ideas by Georg Lukacs, and he came up with the concept of reification that is specific to the late industrial society, in which like workers as subjects actually become objects. This mass production and highly abstract nature of commodified economies and commodified labor of this market of commodities, this highly abstract nature of this way to organize production, it eventually leads to workers or laborers, creators becoming objects themselves. So the whole consciousness of you as a productive force in this economy is you're now not a subject in this creative economy, you are an object. And you are owned in the same way as a means of production, inanimate means of production. This is the dark side. It can go like really we can go really a long way to apply it to most free-to-play games, and it can be applied to some extent to My Singing Monsters, especially to that grinding part. However, as I also, however, this is not why, like, and how free-to-play games were initially designed to be. Like, this logic of reification and alienation is is actually the logic upon which the free-to-play games operate, especially social free-to-play games operate. But the initial idea, and I felt like I should need to add this slide because we are speaking about free-to-play games again at this conference, and I've been speaking about free-to-play games since 2016 at Frog, and I feel like we are not really we are not really remembering anything. Of course, okay, I do, because I'm like I've been speaking it for 5 years. But we need to come back to the economies of free-to-play games and look at how they started. So free-to-play economies are economies of scale, which means they work when there's enough players, and enough is 20 to 100,000 players. Most players never pay, only 2 to 5 to 8% of players pay. So it becomes the challenge of providing just enough enjoyment for free and still ensuring that someone will still want to buy something. And there is the ethical approach to free-to-play games. Like you asked today about the ethical approach to free-to-play games, all books are already written, they were written 5 years ago. So this is the ethical free-to-play design, like two most influential probably books. And of course, the first objective is either fun or utility in the case of applications, and fun in the case of games. And then to provide just enough comfort and fun so they would feel good even if they play for free, and then add something that they would want more, and design some kind of desire to buy something else. Because if we just leave our players in the virtual world on their happy farm. If they have everything, if they enjoy everything, they will never buy anything. Mostly not, they won't. Mostly they won't. So the ethical approach is to give them something else, and it is used in many games, but it does not ensure that you will get 2 to 8% of paying players paying with a of average amount of money, like 10 to 15 euros per month. And when we look at the reality of the companies that publish free-to-play games, then they need to have the exact numbers. They need to know, they need to have the numbers to calculate return of investments, how much to invest and how much time you will need, how much players you will need, how many players you will need to return at least the costs of developing and marketing the game. So hence all those predatory mechanics and dark patterns of game design. Also the economy of scale, like if you make free-to-play games, it is an economy of scale. Like this is on the slide. You can scale them as much as you wish. There will be only like 5% of people who will want something else, and then they will pay. And okay, more people probably will want something, but there will be always this limited amount of the people who would pay. So you need to appeal to the audience. In the case of games, you need to appeal to the audience that is broad enough, probably starting from 20,000 players. If you have 20,000 players in your multiplayer social free-to-play game, you will probably get some money that will cover at least some part of the operational costs. And 20,000 players, if you like use the most it's 20,000 euros in a very, very optimistic scenario 5 years ago. Now it's probably much, much more money to attract that many players by advertising. So you need to make a game that 100,000 people will play, and you will probably have to market this game to probably 10 million people, because not every person who will see your advertising will eventually play the game, and only a small percentage will pay. So this is the economy of scale. And in the end, of course, all these dark patterns, which we have already discussed today, they create quite a terrible reputation for such games in the creative industry. So there are two things that those games typically do. They play safe. They really choose the aesthetics and the worlds that will absolutely certainly appeal to these 100,000 players, or probably to at least 10 million players, probably 10 million players. You better have 10 million players in mind. So this is one thing. And the other thing is that they don't really have much in terms of, like, sometimes they create really talented people, sometimes they attract really talented designers and artists, but typically they're very uniform, they're very homogeneous. And when you look at my singing monsters, they're absolutely not homogeneous. They're not really doing this mass appeal thing. They basically behave like an indie game. And this is probably because they started a bit like an indie game. They just caught the wave. They had some publishers that believed in them, and in the end they made it to the top, even without being this smooth Candy Crush like, or even Pokemon like games that all look the same. They did not try to please 10 million players. They were just being themselves, and this game has preserved at least some level of creative integrity and some really peculiar aesthetics that work for this game, but they would not necessarily work for any other game. For instance, they actually collaborated with the real musicians to create this game. They have lovely PR materials, and this is one of the characters that you get early in the game, the sugar farm. Okay, this is actually Okay, you get the character that you get is Sugar Bush, and Sugar Bush is this guy Christian Bush, and this is his country duo Sugarland. He became actually at the early stage he became so like his son was playing this game, and this musician Christian Bush, he became such a fan of this game that he actually came to this game studio and proposed them to write some music for them. And this is how they got this character, partially based on the real life country musician Christian Bush. And they did quite a lot of interesting, like you can buy a whole orchestra of Christian Bushes, and they all look like monsters, and they all are cute. This is the level of cooperation with the creative industry that most free-to-play games cannot really afford, because they we know such collaborations are the norm in the world of other music video games, such as Guitar Hero has always collaborated with all the big names, and they have thematic games. But it does not really happen much in free-to-play games. I was able to find one more example, and this example is even cooler. Like I found it today. I'm sorry, my presentation is going sideways. So the Russian rock singer Zemfira, the most popular, probably the superstar. She's at the level of a superstar, but she's also the indie musician. So she basically does whatever she wants. And she wrote a song about the character in a free-to-play games. The character Austin from the game Homescapes by the major Russian publisher of free-to-play games, Playrix. Playrix is a very big company that has all money in the world. And this was a Black Swan event. Zemfira simply liked the game. In 2012, she was staying at home. She was playing many free-to-play games because she found them very soothing. And she wrote, but this character, he actually annoyed her a lot. And she wrote a song about how he annoys her. So this is something that you don't do in game marketing. This is something that is not supposed to happen in game marketing, especially in free-to-play games, because it does not appeal to broad audiences, because you need 10 million people to play to at least know about your game. And then someone introduced her to Playrix. She is an indie artist. She refused to collaborate on a commercial basis, but she was able to make the video together with Playrix to the video for this song. And she was able to use all their creative resources, which is game assets and game artists. And she had the access to this amazing creative resources of a major game studio. And this video is amazing. It absolutely goes to the territory of horror. It is a very good gothic horror animated short. I will show you.
Alesha, we give you 3-4 more minutes because it's the break after your talk, but so that you have a scope about your time remaining.
Okay, I think I'm almost there. I know why you put me at the end of this panel. I know because of the last year. I remember.
Exactly.
So when I leave, I will still leave you with this amazing video. And this music video, it actually relies on the horror aesthetics. And these aesthetics refer to abjection, to the filth, mutations of a body. And what is curious is that some of these themes actually also are used in My Singing Monsters.
Just before I start the video, can we just say that for those people who want to take a break afterwards, the video can, I thought you would wanted to play it now. Sorry, that was a mistake, yeah? Okay, sorry for interrupting.
I will share everything just in a couple of minutes. So when we analyze this game aesthetically, we may turn to a much more a much less commercial concept of abjection. And this comes from horror studies, actually. So the aesthetics of abjection, this is not just the uncanny. This is not just something that this is not the other that comes for you. This is the erasure of the difference of the border between self and the other. All this slime, all this body fusion that we can see in my singing monsters actually works not to alienate us from the monsters, but they work to bring us this joyous, childish horror of objection, more objection than horror, although it is of course also used in horror media. And this is where we can disrupt even the free-to-play game industry. This is where I think this game disrupts this free-to-play industry. It not only it provides the means for creative expression, of course you have to earn them, but okay, whatever. It also provides us with the aesthetics that are completely offbeat in the industry, and the aesthetics that actually they recall children's horror, and children's horror is more based on objection than on fear. And this is probably where I will end my presentation. We may talk a little bit more about children's horror, although not that much. We might talk about free-to-play games. And I conclude that this odd example on the mass game market, the free-to-play market, which is the most competitive market ever, this actually embodies a very interesting and risky balance between cute and disgusting, the aesthetics that challenge the players and the creative possibilities that are attached and come in the same package with these aesthetics. So, and I can, okay, last conclusion. So I see the liberating potential of the game in its monstrosity. There is no division between the subject and the object anymore because of the objection in it. And Western scholars treat monsters as enemies for some reason, and I don't really know why, but this game is a very good example where monsters are your friends, they are your bandmates, and however ugly they might look, sometimes even terrifying, they actually give you the power to disrupt the creative economy in which we find ourselves now. Okay, I'm done for today.
Thank you. I hope everybody got this really beautiful conclusion, even in spite of the time. We are in the middle of the break right now.